Hi, my name is Will Kaplan. I'm a parent on the Oregon Pride 2030 team. And this is a follow-up video to our highlight series where we're, showing how to make highlight reel. The previous video, we had taken some footage down from Veo, and now we're going to try and stitch that footage together, maybe add some titles, maybe do a little of retime, which is where you can pause time or slow time down to highlight particular things. But we're going to show you how to use a video editor to take the footage that you've got and turn it into an actual highlight reel as opposed to just individual clips. To start that process, the first thing we need to talk about is what is a video editor. There's lots of them that are out there. This is the software that you're going to use to stitch your clips together and add effects. iMovie is a good example of this. Apple also has Final Cut Pro, which is their professional version. CapCut is an option. Premiere Pro is another option. This is Adobe's version. Again, this is a paid version. I prefer to use DaVinci Resolve. I think this is a great, really powerful video editor. As you see here, there is a free version. There is also the studio version. You do not need the studio version. I am using the free version of this software. You can too. But basically download this, install it, get it onto your machine, and then we can jump into the next step. So speaking of that next step, I have opened up DaVinci Resolve. That's what this looks like right here. The first thing that I need to do is go to the media pool, grab the clip that I want, pull it into the timeline, or excuse me, pull it into the media pool down here. What that allows me to do is when I switch over to editing, I can again grab that particular clip, drag it onto my timeline, and now I'm ready to start editing it. If I have multiple clips up here, I can do the same thing where I basically, pull down each one of those. Let me grab a second one here. You can see that second one's up here, and I can just sort of put them together on the timeline. We'll talk about that in a little bit in terms of how to do transitions and things like that as well. But for now, let's just focus on this first clip. This is the one we just downloaded from Veo. And so what we've got here is, again, a pass from Blake to Rafi. Rafi gets knocked down, she gets back up, scores a goal. Well, the first thing that I want to focus on here is I feel like I'm pretty far away from this. It's relatively difficult to see. So I'm going to highlight the clip that I want to edit. And over here on the right, I've got my inspector panel. So if you don't see this, you just need to click on inspector to bring this up. The first thing I'm going to look at here is my zoom. Now you can just kind of grab this and move it. You can also type in a number and it will, do that. It'll sort of, pop to that particular thing. This in this case is 1.7. That lets me get a little bit closer to the action of what's going on in this particular shot. Now, the other thing that I have the ability to do is move the position of this clip in general. So in this case, it feels like it's a little bit towards the top of the clip. I can pull it back down to center it. Now, part of the reason I'm able to do this without black bars showing up is that we did do a zoom first. But for most of the Veo footage, I'm going to assume you're going to want to do a zoom. And so you do have the ability to sort of move these things around. Okay, so as I then move through this footage, you can either move through it sort of frame by frame, or you can just hit spacebar or the play button. And it will allow you to sort of watch this footage in real time as you see it. So again, like that's a pretty good thing. Now you can see the Veo camera started to track off the actual action. And so I don't want that to happen. So what I want to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to use the keyframe tool to move this footage around as it's actually occurring. So if I move forward, a couple frames at a time here, this is still relatively well centered. I'm going to go ahead and put a keyframe here. And now it's starting to move off frame. And so that's where now I can use my X position to pull it back a little bit into the center. As I continue, it's going to drag it further off. I'm going to bring it back to the center again. Now, when we play through this clip, notice everything is sort of staying a little bit more in frame. It's not really moving off the screen quite as much. Now we've gotten beyond where our keyframes were, so it's doing that again. And if I wanted to, I can still continue to sort of drag it back as needed. where I could, maybe put another keyframe out here and then drag it even further out. And that's gonna, allow me. Now here you can see that black bar is coming into the frame. I wanna make sure that we don't get that. So I'm gonna leave it just off frame. Now we've got a pretty decent clip. Okay, I don't need the rest of this space. I can either grab this and drag it back to where the playhead is, or I can use the trim command to just trim the end of this clip off. Sorry, lost the highlight there. Trim the rest of this clip off to where it's still technically there, but it's not being displayed in the timeline. And so this is now where my clip ends. The other thing I probably want to do is have it fade to black as a transition. I'm going to add, this is a 30 frame per second timeline. So this is, because this is 15, that is half of a second. And so what this is going to do is, as the playhead moves through this, it's just going to fade down to black. You can see that happening right there. What I would then do is basically butt the next clip up against to it, put 15 seconds on this side. And now what I've got is a transition from one clip into the next clip. See how that works? Perfect. All right, let's look at that one more time. Here comes the fade and fade into the next one. All right. The other thing you might want to do with one of these editors is you might want to add some effects. So in particular, titles would be a good example where I want to put in a title and I want to say Rafi goal, and maybe I want to select who's it against. I don't know off the top of my head. I think this is probably LA Select. What this is going to do is this is going to put that text over top of my other clip frame. Now, in the same way that I can change like fonts, I can change, let me see if I can find an actual font here. Like here's an example where we're changing to a different font, and I can move these things around within the frame as well. And so as an example, when I go to my settings, I can then say, well, I don't want it in the middle. I want it off to the left, and I want it down at the bottom. I can do things like that. You can also stack these if you want the fonts to be different sizes or if you want them to be different fonts, however you want. Like if I can basically, make a copy of this one, paste it at the end, and then drag it up onto the video 3 as opposed to the video 2. And now I've got two of these where, as long as this one is the one that's selected with the red outline, I can kind of move it around and you can see there's actually two of them. This would give me the ability to use a different font, all sorts of stuff. You'll notice here in DaVinci, there's a lot of these that are sort of pre-built for you. And so if you want something where maybe like it zips into frame, you can see sort of what that animation looks like for this one. There's a bunch of these that are pre-built and you can just sort of grab the one that you want. Like this is a nice little center reveal. Grab the one you want, drop it on, edit the text, using that title version, using the title stuff. And then when the playhead is over it, that's what you're going to see. Now, in the same way that we did kind of a fade in and a fade out for the clip itself, you can do the same thing on these. So if I wanted to add, half of a second, that's 15 frames, I can do that. And then as the clip starts, you'll see we're just before where the text is going to show up. So that text is going to kind of like fade in. And then at the end of it, we're getting close now where it's going to start fading out. That's how you do something like that. Okay. Now, the last thing that we probably want to do with this is we might want to pause time. So the first thing I'm going to do when I edit the time is I'm going to move my other clips away, because if you bring them on top, you can see it actually changes the time. It changes that clip is available. It sort of overwrites it. And so if we're changing time, it's going to extend this first clip. I want to move the other clip away from this particular clip. Now, what I want to do is I want to basically freeze time, let's say maybe right here where Rafi's getting back up. I'm going to highlight this particular clip. Again, it's got the red frame. I'm going to right click. I'm going to say, show me my retime controls. That brings up this overlay on top of the clip. I'm going to add a speed point, and then I'm going to move forward through time to get to my next speed point. So I want this to pause for about that long. I'm going to add my second speed point in here. Again, just clicking on this little down arrow to add a speed point. And then in here, I'm going to change this. I'm going to freeze this frame. Sorry, not change speed, freeze the frame. And so what that does is that actually pauses time in here where time is running, now it's frozen, time starts again. You can change how long time is frozen by just dragging these things around, these little headers. But what this allows me to do is while we're in this particular frozen time, I can overlay something onto Rafi to draw attention to her. And what I want to overlay, I've got to go get this thing. Give me 1 second here. Is my oval. And so I'm going to drop an oval into the timeline. I'm going to place it above the text. This is obviously very large. It's in the middle of the screen. What we're going to basically just do here is I'm going to edit the zoom of it until it's the size that I want. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to edit its position until it is over Rafi. And so now what we've got is while time is frozen, so here's the end of where time is frozen. So I want this to end there. And here's the beginning of where time is frozen. So I want this to start there. Now what I've got for this is a little bit of action. Time freezes. I can see Rafi, and then we move out of it. Now there's a keyframe in here, which is why the screen is shifting, but you can obviously edit those out. You can change how that actually works. So it doesn't shift there at the end. That's a keyframe issue where we dropped in a couple of those keyframes, and I would just have to clean that up. But that's roughly what I'm doing here. And so then again, I want this to sort of show up and fade out with a fade. And so now what we've got is time stops, fade in, fade out, time starts again, and Rafi gets her goal. Basically, you're just going to repeat this process for each one of the clips that you've got. Obviously, there's a fair amount to learn with DaVinci. This is kind of just a quick overview. And again, what I would recommend is if you're using something like DaVinci, if you're using something like iMovie, whichever one you're choosing to do, just go to YouTube and search for the types of things that you want. So adding text, that's a title. Freezing time, that's a retime control. So you're going to be able to just sort of build up your knowledge based on what you're finding on YouTube. And again, if you have specific questions or if there's something you're just really struggling with, send me a message, get in touch with me. I'm happy to try and walk you through this stuff. But this is the rough sort of process of what this might look like. If you want to add just like, some black space at the end of this, there's a generator here where you can just generate a solid color. What this means is as this clip ends, it goes to black. And maybe here's where you put in, your player's name, their number, the year, the tournament, coach's contact information. That's all good stuff to have in these highlight clips. And so you can either do that at the beginning, you can do it at the end, like however you want to do it. But that's a way that you'd be able to basically then lay over, text on top of just a black background. You can change the color of these. I mean, again, when I highlight this, I have all of this inspector information in terms of what color do I want, and then where this thing sort of would be on the screen, all of that information. When you get to the end of this, with DaVinci, you go to the Deliver tab. This allows you to kind of watch it one last time, make sure it looks just the way you want it to look, and then you're going to render it. This is where you prepare it. Generally speaking, I'll give it some type of a file name. I use MP4 format, and I use H.264 codec. I would highly recommend that you mirror these settings. You then add this to the render queue. That's going to ask you where you want to save it. For me, I almost always just save it to the desktop, puts it over here on the right, and then I hit render all. That's what's going to turn it into that highlight video that you can then upload to YouTube. You can upload it to, a recruiting site, like whatever you need, wherever you want to put it. I like YouTube because then I can just share the link and all the hosting and stuff is just taken care of for me. But that's basically how you would create one of these videos. I will put this little white circle PNG somewhere that we can get to it, so that if you want to use mine instead of having to make your own, you're welcome to do that. I'll probably, drop a link or something in the description of this video so you can go get that. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. Happy to try and be a resource. Thanks. Bye.